Good evening to all those lifelong learners out there. The book Ian Mann will be reviewing this evening is Monetizing Innovation. I may do the authors a disservice if I try to pronounce their names, but they're on the cover of this book, and we can ask Ian for some input on that. And I think it's a topic that we all need to focus on at the moment. So welcome, Ian.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here, Linda.
Great. So, Ian, as always, let's get into it. Well, the first question is, what did you find intriguing about this book?
I think that we all know that we have to really worry about innovation. In the past, a company would last for 100 years, 50 years. Now they last very short periods of time. And if you don't want to flame out, you better be very sure that you're constantly innovating everything that you do, so that your innovations are going to keep you going. So people need to innovate. We all know that. That's not particularly smart. The question is, when you innovate, why is it that so few people make real money out of innovation? They come up with good ideas, and somehow it's not that the ideas are a flop, it's that the business flops. And one of the things that the authors of this book put their finger on is that pricing, we all know pricing is simple. You just work out how much it costs to make, you put some margin on top, and that's called a price. Price is a number. And he says that is completely wrong, and that pretty much explains why it is so many people get this stuff so completely wrong. And what they do in this book is they investigated how this would work. You know that in a survey that was done by the company in I think it was about 2014, they surveyed 1,600 companies. That's a big survey.
Sure.
They did this across 40 countries where they operate, and 80% of the people had determined the price of the product just before it launched. And they said that is a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for disaster. What's worthwhile thinking about is that we need to work out why companies fail, how they cannot fail, and what you can possibly do about them. So that's why this book is a very important book.
So did I catch that right? There are kind of like 3 ways that companies fail with their pricing, and how would we go about pricing them? Obviously, a bit in advance, not the day it comes out.
what they've identified is that there are, as you say, there are 3 distinct ways in which people typically fail when they price a product. So the first thing you've got to do is to work out what those 3 are. Then once you're clear about what those 3 are, and by the way, you should be able to identify number of your own company or companies that you work with who have made these terrible mistakes, and then try and work out, well, what can you possibly do about it? So let's just start with this one. There's one of the 3 types is called feature shock. Feature shock. Now, probably one of the most well-known feature shocks is that you went in Amazon. I don't know if you know this, but Amazon had a phone. They developed a phone.
Okay.
It was absolutely fantastic. I mean, whatever you could possibly want out of a phone and didn't even need or want in a phone was in the phone.
Like a mobile?
Yeah, mobile phone, yes.
All right.
And the reason why Amazon was interested in it was because Amazon wanted to be able to sell their products. And they figured that we'll give you a classy phone. Really, I mean, whatever you want in the phone, this one's got. Okay. And you'll also, by the way, also be able to order directly from Amazon and buy goods from them. So here they launched this thing with great fanfare, and it is a dismal failure. And the reason why it was a dismal failure, it was absolutely packed with masses of nice to haves.
Okay.
But far fewer must haves. Massive. So what happens is here we see this huge volume of features. Now, you want a phone that you can use, that you can actually understand, that doesn't take you a long time to work out. That when you see all the 67 possible features, that's only some of them. And you say, I use 4. Now you're going to show me 67. That's called feature shock, not future shock, feature shock.
And I'm
your
sure
social-
because it's
Sorry?
got all these features, you think you're paying a lot more, even if you're not really.
Well, that's possibly true, but in fact, the facts are it seems that the contrary is true. It appears
Okay.
that people are shocked by the volume of features, and they're most likely to overlook the few features that they do value, and they would have paid for gladly. But with all
Okay.
these things, I'm overwhelmed by the mass of stuff that you're giving me, and because of that, I want to back off. Now,
Okay.
there was a car when the Dart when Dodge realized that Chrysler Dodge realized that compact cars that's where the world is going to, and the Japanese in there. What they did was they decided that they were going to create a Dart, a new version of the Dart car, Dodge Dart, and they were going to make this an absolutely perfect car, perfect. And the engineers were given a mandate, and they would say, listen, just do whatever you have to. You have the latitude to build, but what you've got to build is a car that is absolutely bloody perfect.
For
And
who, I suppose.
Well, the thing was, the car was just filled with features that they thought the world clearly wanted and was ready. Now, I don't know if you remember Apple Maps.
Yeah.
Do you remember Apple Maps?
Yeah.
This car was Apple Maps bad. It was so bad. It was absolute failure. When they launched, they thought it's going to be a blockbuster. It's going to be fantastic. Everybody's going to be chasing after this. The fact is, nobody wanted the car. They sold so few cars. What happened there? They just shocked people with the masses of features in this vehicle, and that doesn't work. The key is to be sure that the nice to haves don't overwhelm the few must haves.
Yeah.
And the few must-haves people are prepared to pay for. And
Sure.
nice-to-haves just bewilder them. So that's one type of source of failure. The
Feature
second
shock.
yes, feature shock.
Cool.
The second type of failure comes from a minivation. A minivation is you're the right product for the right price, but it's priced too low to achieve its full revenue potential. You're almost giving it away. And very often, a lot of people who come up with great ideas for something new, whether it's a concept or whether it's a thing, they undervalue it. And because they undervalue it, the market doesn't value it.
Sure.
They say if it's that cheap, it can't be any good. I had an experience which I will not forget. I was working in Botswana, and I was doing this strategy for a company there, parastatal, and during the dinner we had regular dinners together. You know, you go to these lodges and you have dinners at the end of the day. I think the lady who I was talking to had had a little too much to drink, and she said to me, you know, when we opened your technical report, which is when you give a tender, you have to have a technical side and then you have the financial side. They're usually in two, well, at least in Botswana, they're almost always on two separate envelopes. So we opened your technical report, and the guy said, this is what we need. This is going to work for us. Then we opened your financial report, and you were so cheap compared to the others that they actually had a discussion, how good can he possibly be if this is all he's charging? And I think that's the minivation, that you have the right product for the right market, but because you thank God they employ me, but because you priced it too low, firstly it doesn't achieve its revenue potential if it's a good, and if it's service, it doesn't achieve its revenue potential. But don't be surprised if both of those, whether it's a good or a service, are rejected on the grounds if it's so cheap it really can't be good. So it's quite important to really understand what is it that you are worth, and if you are worth it, are you pricing yourself at a price that really makes it reasonable for them to worry about it?
That old mindset, if you get it for nothing, it can be worth nothing.
Well, why would they give it to you for nothing if it was
Sure.
worth something? And the fact is that it's a very, very common type of failure. Then there's the third. So that's first one's feature shock. Second one is minivation.
Minivation. Yeah.
The third one is the undead. Undead.
Sounds odd.
Undead is a product that should have been killed because it answers questions that nobody asks and provides the wrong answer to the right questions. It's one of those things. It's dead, and because it should have been dead a long time. People actually go about doing things like that without having done their homework properly. So when you have failures, they usually fit into one of these three different categories.
Okay.
Now, we need to, if we have a look at price, I opened particularly by telling you that price is a number, but price is not a number. I think we've got to stop thinking of price as a number. And this is really important. Price is an expression of the value that the customer perceives this good to have.
Sure.
Price
But then, of course, the customer must want that specifically service.
Well, exactly. Well, if I don't need the service, it's worth nothing to me. So what they do with this is it's an expression of the value that the customer perceives, and because they perceive this value, they're willing to pay for it.
Okay.
So when we think of price as and not a number, this is really important. We've got to get our head around it, because so often people say, look, cost of production was this, we need to have a return of that, let's add that number on, that's what we're going to charge for our goods.
Yeah.
Or, other people have done this is what we're going to charge. Unless yours is identical, it doesn't help you to compare to anybody else. And you need to start with this notion, price is not a number. Price is an expression of value that the customer perceives, and they're also a measure of their willingness to pay for it. When you start thinking of price like that, then you start relating to things completely differently. And pricing can be out in all sorts of strange ways. I'll start with cars. So let's stick with cars. When you looked at the Porsche Cayenne, do you remember the first Porsche Cayenne?
Yes, I do.
My response to
causing a bit of brand confusion going on there.
Absolutely. And I've said to myself, this makes no sense at all. These people who want a 4x4 will buy a Jeep, or they'll buy a Range Rover, but they're not going to go and buy a Porsche as a sports car.
Exactly. It's synonymous with that, with speed and with racing.
You have a box with too much power. And when they entered the SUV market, they were completely out of their comfort zone. Now, when you're completely out of your comfort zone and you actually know it, then you start worrying about what you can do about it. The bottom line of the results of all the efforts were that the Porsche was the car that generated the most profits in the industry at its time. No car produced more profit than the Cayenne did.
Okay.
And I think that we'll talk about why that happened, but I think that that's important. So if you can get it right, you can get yourself to a situation where you can generate profits that nobody else can think of. No other car company had made so much money out of a single model. If you look on the other side of the where pricing can go wrong, pricing can go wrong. Let's stick with Porsche and let's work this out. Every single feature on the Porsche, they pick a price and say, this is going to be our price point, so let's sell the car at this price. What they did, every single feature had to stand trial before the customer for their willingness to pay.
Okay.
Do you want a 4-liter engine with 6 gears? Do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want the seats to look like this? Do you want that to look like that? Very good. You want the seats to look like, how much more would you be prepared to pay for those seats?
Yeah. Okay, I get it.
So literally every single feature there, they secured the correct price because they got real people who really were going to buy the car saying, if you put that in, I'll be prepared to pay $10,000 more, or $5,000, or $6 more. Oh, we'll leave the $6 one out. But you only put in their vehicle the features that people would really be prepared to pay for and would not want to have missing from their vehicle.
Okay.
That's why Porsche is so successful. I don't know. Yes, 2008, Asus came up with a mini notebook, the first mini one. I don't know if you saw them. I'm looking at a computer now, which is a small little computer. I don't know how many inches this is, but it's a small computer. I remember seeing a computer not much smaller than that, which was portable and had all stuff in it. I mean, it was really a neat little portable.
Yeah.
And that was the Asus mini notebook. Came out at €299, which is extraordinarily cheap.
Yes.
The customers were extraordinarily enthusiastic about it. It was absolute amazing at the price firstly, and there was a lovely little machine.
Sure.
Well, now you would obviously not expect that to fail. It couldn't fail because it was just what customers want. They're ready to pay. If I want a computer that works, that's okay, that's small, that's nippy, that's compact, and that doesn't cost much money, there's the Asus. So what if it's so right? Why was it so wrong?
Yeah.
It was wrong. It was wrong because in days, not weeks, not months, and not the year, in days, Germany sold out of all available Asus. There were no more available. The demand exceeded supply by 900%.
Sure.
900%.
So they misjudged
They couldn't manufacture it fast enough. They lost significant revenue. If you imagine if they could have sold that, if they could have sold all the 900% that they couldn't sell. Imagine if they could have sold, how much money they would have made.
Yeah.
What they should have done, had they priced their computer slightly more, they would have sold all the stuff slightly more. Let's say they put on 20% markup. Well, 20% markup, understand they weren't going to sell so many, but they would have sold out everything that they had. There wouldn't have been the demand that way exceeded supply. If they put up extra $50 on it, they would have sold out all that they had because there was demand for that particular computer at that price. Add $50 onto your €299, euros onto your $299, and you've made some serious money.
Yeah, but that would then boost the ability to produce more as well.
Maybe for the next round, if they were going to, but that round, the factory was designed only for that, and on that round alone, they lost significant revenue. They could have priced it higher. They were way underpriced, and the Asus left a lot of money lying on the table.
Oh yeah.
So
just a curveball for you, Ian.
Sure.
Going back to the Porsche instance, do you not think to a large extent what people were wanting to buy was the name Porsche? You know, if you think about people, they go out somewhere and somebody says, "What do you drive?" and they say a Porsche. They don't usually say which Porsche. They just say Porsche. And I think there's a lot of value attached to that brand as well.
There undoubtedly is money attached to that brand, but how do you maximize what you're charging for the brand? Because we know Porsche is usually a sports car, but there's an SUV. Yes. How can we charge you? The Cayenne was more expensive than comparable SUVs.
Yes.
But the thing was that they were so careful with how they priced everything, which was at the maximum.
Individual thing.
And because they were so correct, it made the highest profits in the industry, and they sold what they expected to sell.
Yeah, there was good planning.
Talking cars, I think that if my memory serves me correct, the Q7, when it first came out, they also didn't have enough stock. They in fact had not bad as an Asus, because Asus is a little thing, but they didn't have enough stock. And had they raised their price just slightly, they would have made more money and sold everything they had available. So the pricing point is really important to get to. And the key is, whenever you're coming up with something new, you've got an opportunity. So don't waste it.
So how do you go about doing it?
This is it. Most people that I know of would not go and discuss the prices of a good or a service with their potential customers.
Okay.
I'm not sure why, whether they're afraid the customer will say, well, why are you asking me stupid questions? You don't even have it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the reason is. But for some reason or other, there seems to be a genuine reluctance to put real effort into talking to potential customers and saying to them, if I put this feature in, how much more would you pay for it? If I took that feature out, how much less would you expect to pay for it? And you have these real price discussions with people. I don't know why there seems to be a fear of having a price discussion with people. And one of the things that the authors make very clear is that when you decide that we've manufactured this, first, you should never have manufactured until you've had the price discussion. To manufacture and have the price discussion afterwards, you'll probably realize, like they realized with the Dart, we had so many features that nobody wanted, or the Amazon phone, so many features that if we just didn't put any of those features in, they would have focused on the features that they wanted. They would have bought the phone at the price we wanted. When they're overwhelmed by so many features, they didn't get it. Or we did the minivation problem, where we sold it too cheap for what it could be. We didn't innovate and take this innovation to the max and get the max out of it. Okay. Or we kept going with the undead. When you have a price discussion with people, they will say, your solution as an answer to the question I don't have has no value to me.
Yeah.
And don't even start this. The key is this. If price was a number, no problem at all. Find an accountant, ask him to look at it. He'll come up with the correct number. We want to make how much % profit? This is what you do. How much does it cost you to make? That's what you do. You haven't worked out what you're supposed to make yet. And by working out what, sorry?
I think too many leadership positions are held by people who do cost accounting, and they drive that agenda instead of driving an agenda from a marketing point of view.
The most important thing we have to do is a cost thing. Don't produce something that can't sell. How do you know whether it'll sell? Well, we're hoping and praying. We've done a lot of market research. We've looked around the competitors. We see, now go and find your potential customers and say, would you be prepared to pay this amount for these features? Would you be prepared to pay X amount for that? Which features would you have to give up if you want to keep the price below this? When you have those detailed discussions before you go to the drawing boards.
Yeah.
That's because generally what happens is we overwhelm people with features hoping they will cover absolutely everybody's needs. And we usually either give you so much that you're overwhelmed and you miss the features that you wanted. They're buried there somewhere. Or the features of the undead where they just don't matter to anybody and they shouldn't have been there in the first place.
And the person who's developing the product like that and is hanging on to it and nobody else likes it.
That's the point.
All right.
A very, very important start to pretty much any good or service that people want to innovate on.
That's an interesting thought. So, and all of this is in the book. They can read it up and find it. And I think that this book and last week's book about questions, asking the right questions, they actually go quite hand in hand, don't they?
They do indeed. I think this issue of questioning, that questioning on that side was really focusing around managers exploiting their staff by asking them questions, as opposed to him to keep quiet, and if I want to answer, I'll give it to you. Here you're saying, ask your customers questions, your potential customers questions, and just see what they'll come up with. And when you ask them those questions, it's amazing what sort of things you're going to find.
Yeah, it's that whole concept of turning it on its head,
Yes.
Asking the questions, getting the answers, and then developing, as opposed to innovating something that nobody really wants. Because you didn't ask the questions.
Or because you give them more than they want and that swamps them and they don't see what they do want.
Yeah. Oh, that was a very interesting book. Thank you very much. And we got a name for next week's book. What was next week's book? You did tell me again.
It's called Great at Work. It's written by a guy called Hansen.
Okay, Hansen.
And
all right.
What it does is it gives you some really good insights into what makes people succeed at work.
That's fantastic. So we'll review that book next week. Everybody, put it in your scheduler so that you don't miss it. But Ian, for this evening then, any final word on the book?
nothing, but don't dare launch anything without taking this advice. It's really too important.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of new things coming out at the moment, so it's really great time to read the book. As always, Ian, thank you so much for your time. It's much appreciated. So for everybody else, if you found this useful, please hit the like button, subscribe, follow, share, and more importantly, talk to us. You can complete our book a consultation form on the contact page of our website. You'll also find Ian's details there as well. You're welcome to contact him. And as always, thanks for the privilege of your time and good night.